This is probably going to be a 10-minute video, but I'm seeing a bunch of people share their ghost stories that are like so crazy that people wouldn't believe that they're true. And my family has one. I don't even believe in ghosts, but there's actual like police involved. I don't want to reveal too many details because I want to respect the people that were affected by it, but there are like news stories, etc. It's a really insane story. I want to preface by saying I try not to believe in ghosts. I think it's a defense mechanism, but I honestly am a huge believer in like the theory that a lot of people that have ghost experiences live in places with like high carbon monoxide poisoning, which is why it's always like older homes, which that can lead to like hallucinations. It's a whole rabbit hole. But this one is like real. So my older sister, when I was in middle school, she was in college and she lived in a house in Carlsbad with her friends. Funny enough, Carlsbad would eventually be where the Paranormal Activity series took place, and it's so eerily similar. My sister was living there with her like friends, roommates, and she was upstairs, another girl's upstairs, and they would always kind of hear odd things in the house, but it wasn't enough to like raise the alarm bells. But there was one night where someone walked up the stairs, they went into the bathroom, and my sister thought it was just her roommate, but the person began like turning the faucet on, turning it off, like opening cupboards, then closing them. But then it started to get more like repetitive and aggressive, and eventually she heard footsteps and someone like jiggling with her doorknob, but her door was locked. And then the person walks to the other side of the hallway to get into her roommate's room. The door opens and the girl screams, and she uses like the joined balcony to run into my sister's room, and they call 911. They weren't able to figure out what exactly was going down. And so one of the girls in the house who was super religious ended up having someone, I believe it was like Catholic, like they came and they blessed the house basically. Now, important context is they had one room to fill downstairs. There is like a big house, a bunch of them live there. And they got this one guy off of Craigslist to move into that room downstairs. And he seemed fine, but he would always come home from work with like mysterious injuries that weren't really explained. And he kept to himself. But the night before the person was going to come to bless the house, he just like went missing. He left his motorcycle in the garage. He left his cat at the house. He was never found again. His girlfriend came looking for him. His work came looking for him. They filed a missing persons report. No one ever really figured out where he was. And now you're not supposed to do this, but one of the girls in the house, they kept sending his credit card bills there, and I guess like one of the girls in the house opened it up just to see like where he was, and he was going like in circles around the country. So they were kind of like, okay, he's either chasing something or like running from something, but no one ever heard from him. Now the person that blessed the house was going room to room, and when they went into his room, they were like, oh, like this is the source of the problem. Like someone's doing some weird stuff in this room. How they figured that out, I don't know. Do I believe it? I don't know. But they said weird stuff was going on in that room specifically. If you thought that was bad, here's where it gets even weirder. So my sister and all her friends move out of the house, that lease ends. And I mean, I would go and spend the night there when I was visiting her. Like I'd been in the house, it had weird vibes, whatever. But a couple years went by and I never really thought about the house ever again. Until my sister came to visit and she was like, hey, like, do you remember that one weird house that I lived in that you would visit? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, dude, look it up on the news. Now, this is where it gets really dark, and I want to like respect the people involved. But essentially, what happened is the landlord, who my sister spoke to, said was super nice, super cordial, super normal. He moved into the house when their lease ended, and all of the girls moved out. He moved in with his daughter, and then they wanted to fill one of the bedrooms upstairs, and so they got a college student guy to move into the room upstairs. Now, of course, the plausible explanation is like this is probably just a weird mental health, like a real mental health crisis that led to weird behavior. But in the news, it said that he um unalived the college kid that moved upstairs, but the series of events leading up to that was also very bizarre, is reported by the neighbors. This was in, I believe it was like 2010 when Ring cameras were kind of becoming a thing, but not huge yet. And there was an influx of neighbors that had Ring cameras or just security cameras installed around their house because specifically that guy, the landlord, was becoming aggressive, walking up and down the street, kind of grunting, talking to himself, going up to doors, just very odd behavior. And the night that this altercation happened, it was reported that the landlord was in the backyard chanting and dancing around a fire pit. And the noise was kind of what led to the altercation between him and the guy renting the room upstairs. But like in the news articles, it says that this roommate really kept to himself. There wasn't that many issues. And I don't want to say the word because I might get flagged, but like you can look up news reports that the bathroom and like the upstairs area where it took place, there was red stuff that was drawn all over the walls, and they just said it depicted weird symbols. They never described what those symbols might be. So the guy now 10 years later is obviously still in prison. The roommate unfortunately passed away, and I believe he's even said that he doesn't have any recollection of that time and what was going on. And so, again, to me, in reality, it's clearly maybe just like a mental health crisis. But with the other factors involved, it's all just so weird that this like really normal guy could move back into his house after there was some dark stuff happening in the house. And weird, like just like there'd be footsteps if you were home alone. My sister said it was just like but it wasn't a calming presence. It was like a dark presence, kind of antagonizing. Uh, and then what would eventually happen in the house, maybe it was like a weird time warp of what was to come in the future. And it was just like harnessing this energy. I don't know. Again, I don't really believe in ghosts. I try not to believe in this stuff, but it's the only thing in my life that I've been secondhand to that I was like, what the heck? Like I was in the room. I spent time in the room in the bathroom where this happened years later. And it's just so unfortunate for everyone involved. I think about the daughter. I think about the victim's family. It's an awful story. And it's the only thing that makes me question what was going on there. And then it was even weirder when years later, like Paranormal Activity would come out and the houses look similar to the house that it took place in. And the whole premise, of Paranormal Activity was like odd things happening in a house and these security cameras and like nanny cams were capturing it. And this story was just so parallel to what happened in that house. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Let me know if you guys want more of these like in-depth 10-minute story times, but to this day, I don't really know what I believe, but that it was an awful situation. So yeah, let me know your thoughts.